Today we're looking at basics part 2 and I'll show you a range of recipes. Some are more basic, some a little bit more involved, but it's still simple because you're just following the steps with the guided cooking. So I'll show you in the order that they're here. So the first one is the whole milk crumpets. These are just yum. I started making these last year after going to a restaurant that served their cheese course, a sharp cheddar with crumpets, and it was so yum, and butter of course. So I knew there was a recipe in Thermomix that I'd seen before, had a go, and it's super easy and they're so yum. With this, my one tip is they are cooked in a fry pan over in poaching rings. And the first time I did them, I only bought 4 poaching rings. That was a mistake because this recipe makes about 24. So I've now got 12 poaching rings and I do 3 fry pans at a time. And so it's much simpler when you get to the cooking process. The preparation process is super simple. You just need to do it in advance as the mixture needs to sit for an hour, maybe a bit longer, depending on the warmth of the day. I normally just put it in the oven if it's a colder day with the light on, and that's what I do with all my doughs, particularly if it's not such a warm day. So this is your baker's flour that you'll need to buy if you're doing any of the breads and pizza doughs and so forth. It'll be sugar, yeast, etc., as you'll see there. And when the mixture is ready, it's incredibly light, sort of pancake batter consistency, but it's got bubble. You can already see the sort of bubbles in it. Okay, so the next recipe, super simple and really good if you're going to do yogurt, which we'll talk about as well. So fruit cauli, so good to put in with your yogurt, good to have over ice cream, other desserts and so forth. And basically fruit, sugar, lemon juice into the bowl, blitz it up a bit and cook. Now with this you can certainly use frozen fruit. I think that's probably the only way I've ever done it, and it's absolutely perfect. Now yogurt, there's a couple of methods for this. I've just shown you today the mixing bowl method. So the Thermomix has a fermentation mode, which means it will keep the Thermomix at a constant temperature that you need to turn your milk mixture into yogurt over an 8-hour period. So this recipe is you heat up the milk, you wait for it to come down to temperature of 45 degrees, and it does say approximately 60 minutes. In reality, it's 2 hours, so just be aware of that. Then you put in a little bit of your previous yogurt. So if you haven't made your own yogurt before, just buy some Greek yogurt in a small tub and put the small amount of that in, just 110 grams. And you start fermentation mode through the guided cooking, and that keeps it at 40 degrees for 8 hours. And that's it. Now a couple of tips here. If you use UHT milk, you can remove the step where you have to heat it up to 80 degrees first. Okay, so with that you just need to get it to the 45 degrees and add it, and then continue on with these steps. So what I do if I'm using UHT milk, just to make it a bit quicker, if I've suddenly realised at 10 o'clock at night, oh, I need to make yogurt, is I put in my UHT. And another tip, I only do a litre generally, but you can do whatever you need. So I put that in and I use the warm up mode to get it to 45 degrees. That doesn't take very long. Once Thermomix tells me it's at 45, I jump back into the recipe and continue on. The other tip I have, if you want a thicker yogurt, it already has a milk powder which makes it a bit thicker. Again, you can leave that out and it's perfectly fine. It will still make the yogurt. However, if you want it even thicker, is you can strain it some of the way off the next day. I just do it with a sieve with some baking paper in it, not baking paper, paper towel, but it needs to be a good quality paper towel that's nice and thick, or a nut milk bag, and then that will strain that off. Yes, so I drain out some of the excess whey just for about an hour, and then I get a thicker yogurt. Okay, so we'll go back and into the next recipe. So the mushroom risotto recipe. This is the recipe that I use as the base for all my risottos. The only time I've ever made it with mushroom is at demonstrations for Thermomix. So generally I just use it as my base in terms of the method, and at the point when it says to add the mushrooms, that's when I add zucchini and bacon and whatever else I'm making that day, and it works perfectly. Now this recipe, if you've previously had a TM5 or a TM31, you'll probably be familiar with the mushroom risotto recipe, as I was. But when you use the TM6 version of this recipe, you'll see here that it uses high temp at 2 stages, and that function makes the risotto so much better than it previously was. It gives it just that better depth of flavour and nuttiness to the rice, and yeah, it's really yum. So it prompts you for the high temp and to put your splash guard onto the machine during the recipe. So with this, simple steps for chopping, a couple of high temp steps, and then you just let it cook for 13 minutes. After it's cooked, put it into a thermoserver if you have one, or into another bowl, or you can just let it sit in the Thermomix bowl, to be honest. Add the parmesan and stir it. I usually add a little bit of lemon juice and pepper as well, and then give it 10-15 minutes, and then it'll be perfect and will have absorbed a bit more of the liquid. With this recipe, I find also this version, compared to what I was using before, it does reheat really well, so you've still got that good consistency for a reheat, hasn't dried out. Okay, next recipe, caramelized onions, and this also gives you an opportunity to use the high heat function. And look how simple it is. You've got 2 steps. So oil, onions, high temp, add your other ingredients and cook for 3 to 4 minutes. And that's it. Now with these, you don't chop the onions in the Thermomix. It's just cutting into the wedges, so you've got the larger pieces of onion, and that only takes you a couple of minutes, or not a couple of minutes. It takes you a sec to cut them as you like. I've added this recipe here as an opportunity to use the Varoma. These lemon cupcakes are just lovely, and you also make a syrup afterwards to pour over, or to spoon over. So with these, to cook these in the Thermomix, you need, into the Varoma on top, you need small silicone cupcake molds, which you can get from basically any $2 shop, kitchen shop. And then they will sit on the Varoma bowl and also in the tray to cook. So really the steps are just making your batter. So if you're making any muffins or cake, it would be similar number of steps. And then you set the Varoma for 22 minutes and go. After they're cooked, you just put the sugar, water, lemon juice to make a quick syrup, and that's 3 minutes. And then they're spooned over the puddings, and then a little bit of coconut on top makes them really lovely. The quiche Lorraine I've been making since I got my TM6. I don't know why, but I'd never really bothered with pastry before, so I decided I was going to give it a go, and I don't know why, but why I never did it. Super easy, and this recipe is really simple. You've usually got the ingredients, or pretty much. I don't normally have creme fraiche, or you can put sour cream or pouring cream, but if we've got that, you've pretty much got everything else. Bacon cubes, not necessary to go and buy bacon cubes, just use normal bacon and chop it up into pieces. So it does look more complicated because you've got sort of different components. So grating the cheese, which you'll use to put on at the end, make the pastry and then roll that out, and then make the filling, which is only a few minutes of cooking time. Now, we like Mexican in this house, so this seasoning, this will mean you no longer need to buy the packaged up seasoning, and you can just use the spices that you already have. So here you add your chili powder, garlic powder, paprika, cumin seeds, etc. Blitz it all up for a minute on speed 10. So this will be one of those noisy processes. You get a powder, and then you've got that for your next however many Mexican dishes to add. And it does really make it easier. There's a fajita recipe on here, for example, that has you adding all the spices independently, but instead you can just throw in your taco seasoning and you're done. And the final recipe today is a Mexican one. This is the chicken and spinach enchiladas. So with this one, again, follow the steps. With this one, the filling gets all mixed up together. So you do cook the chicken and the spinach in the varoma up above at this step 6. You can see 14 minutes. And then after that, you're putting the cheese, chicken, spinach, and so forth into the bowl with half of the sauce that you've already cooked, and that gets blitzed up. So it does get on reverse, so it does get shredded into it, and then you've got that mix to put in your enchiladas. My one tip here is, if you can, make that in advance and put it in the fridge, because it's much easier than to assemble the tortillas, because you don't have that extra wetness, if you like, from the filling, which will otherwise seep and make it a bit difficult to fold the enchiladas. And that is yum. So there are a few more basics, and hopefully that also gives you some ideas of things to search for. Think about the type of food you like eating, and you're bound to find recipes that will make making that food so much simpler. Enjoy exploring Cookidoo just that bit more and getting started with cooking in your Thermomix.